Much has been written and can be read about the early publishing rights for Tetris. For those interested in reading the full story, I'd recommend the fantastic graphic novel Tetris, The Games People Play by Box Brown. It's a snappy, beautifully stylised comic breakdown of what could otherwise be a trudge of legalese. For those who just need the gist though, know that several companies fought, through dubious contracts, willful misinterpretation and big money deals, to license Tetris from the Soviet Union, seeing as the game was owned wholly by the state for a good deal of its life due to it being developed by Pajitnov whilst working for the Soviet Academy of Sciences. For casual players, this meant that in a 1-year period, Tetris would appear on computers, courtesy of Spectrum Holobyte, in the arcades, courtesy of both Sega and Atari, as well as on the NES through Atari again, this time masquerading as Tengen, and finally Nintendo. Whilst it's Nintendo's effort that has endured, still being played today in the classic Tetris World Championships,
Tetris, boom, Tetris for Jonas.
I want to talk instead about a different 8-bit console version of the game, one that found life almost 30 years on after the initial NES release. Peter McQuillan's Dúshlán. Its name is taken from the Irish word for challenge. Although the game does prove difficult in places, the real challenge for me came from attempting to pronounce the game's title. Sincere apologies in advance to any Irish viewers wincing every time I butcher their language. This 2016 homebrew game is set across 10 stages, with each level introducing a gimmick that changes the way you need to play. Stage 1 is conventional Tetris fare, and as the stages progress you'll find yourself dealing with awkward shaped blocks, an upside down well, garbage blocks that spawn without set pattern across the play space, bombs that must be defused in strict time limits, moving rows that garble your neat stack, as well as combinations of several of these hazards at once. You're given a small hint as to each stage's gimmick by its title, in what I can only assume is a nod to the single-screen platform games of the ZX Spectrum like Jet Set Willy. The level names all use subtle humour to give you some contextual awareness of what's ahead. The upside down stage, for example, was titled "G'day mate." The sudden spawning garbage bricks are playfully introduced as shooting stars. It's just a small aside, but one that gives the game a certain character, a certain flavour. The game uses what feels like a reasonably standard rotation system, feeling close in manoeuvrability to Nintendo's own NES release. It folds in some later, more modern mechanics as well, which is perhaps unsurprising given the year of its release. Dúshlán features ghost pieces which can be toggled on and off, hard drops and hold pieces. The implementation of these are not always in the conventional ways we expect in modern Tetris titles though. Abilities are limited by the NES controller's lack of buttons. A and B rotate, either clockwise or counterclockwise as is standard, and up on the D-pad is used to hold a piece or pull a held piece from storage. This operates with the strange side effect that a piece can be stored across stages even though your stack is reset upon each transition. It doesn't sound like much, but it means you are able to hold awkward oversized pentominoes as well as smaller truncated pieces for use in stages they were not intended for. Whilst a potential nightmare if stuck with a large cross piece in the fast moving bomb disposal stage, this behaviour also becomes a way to game the system by holding a smaller 1x2 piece to plug gaps in the same time limited stage. The down key allows you to drop your piece faster. Options on the title screen allow you to change the function of the button to perform either a hard drop, though still one that gives you a moment to rearrange slightly before lock on landing, regular speedy descent a la most titles released in the late 80s and early 90s, or a hybrid system that I couldn't really get my head around. For my money, keeping Dúshlán's controls simple ensure it remains fun, and these extra comfort options, although trying to allow players to tailor their experience slightly, felt a little bit woolly and a little bit unnecessary. On a good run, the game's 10 stages can be beaten in about 15 minutes or less. Certain elements dictated by random number generation though, for example, where the shooting star blocks form, or where bombs are placed at the start of stage 6, can mean that certain attempts to beat the game can feel a little bit hopeless. On one play, a spawn block appeared just under where new pieces drop, meaning that I topped out my well without even realising, as I kept getting snagged on the newly formed overhang, and on another play, the bombs were placed in such an awkward tangle that the pieces I was being given just didn't seem to usefully fit the gaps I had to work with. Overall though, this is a brisk, modern look at the classic Tetris formula, using what we recognise from Nintendo's NES release before subverting it with humour. If the game was longer, I could imagine more playful extensions akin to WarioWare's constant reinvention of gaming tropes and language. However, even in its short length, Dúshlán stands as a fun, freeware take on the core mechanics of Tetris and is absolutely worth a shot if you enjoy the classic gameplay of late 80s Tetris releases.